Welcome to JC Media. I recently was wakened at exactly 3:33 a.m.
It was like every other month, and then it started becoming every night. And I'm talking about being almost kicked out of bed. So I was praying and worshiping the Lord and trying to understand. I assumed it was Jeremiah 33:3. Show me great and mighty things I know not. And so I was praying and worshiping and asking the Lord, what is it that He wants me to know? But I didn't get anything. The very next day, I was watching a pastor and he was talking about Ezekiel 33:3. I looked that up to understand what he was talking about. If when he sees the sword come upon the land, he blows the trumpet and warns the people. King James Version. So I think the Lord was trying to warn me, so I prayed into that. And I started worshiping Him and just praising and worshiping the Lord. And then I had a vision about a dream that I had a long time ago. And in the vision, I was doing a video and I was uploading it to YouTube. I remembered the dream. So I'll give you a little brief history. In 2006, I had this dream. I was praying and fasting over this certain situation. I was struggling financially. And I was praying and fasting and asking the Lord for an answer. And I really didn't get an answer. I seen this author on TV, so I ordered his book, How to Become a Millionaire God's Way. And I read the book, and it centered around Joseph and the dream, and how God told him the future, and how he was able to become wealthy through this dream. So I prayed, and I asked the Lord. And as I was praying, I was watching TV, and this guy came on early morning show, and the stock market crashed on that particular day. It dropped 400 points. He had this specialist on, and he was talking about don't freak out, don't panic. If you knew the future, you could invest in certain stocks and you become a millionaire. And so if you just only knew the future, but the stock market will come back up, and he insured everybody. And I thought to myself, if I knew the future. So I started praying and I started fasting, and I asked the Lord to show me the future. So I had a dream, and in this dream, I was in the middle of a field, and I looked around. Everything was pretty much drying and dying up. It looked like fall. So I started walking, and I seen a city or a town, a large town, and I started walking through the town, and there was trash everywhere. It looked like a war zone. It was just trash everywhere, flyers. I mean, it was in disarray. People, a lot of homeless people, a lot of I really didn't see the people at first, but they were like cardboard boxes, a lot of trash, and it seemed like certain people were living there. It just looked like the town was almost deserted. And I started walking, and all of a sudden, a group of people started running after me. So I got a little nervous, taking off and running, and I seen this dumpster, and I climbed up the dumpster, and the wall was short enough to where I could reach it. And so I jumped up, grabbed the wall, and climbed up on top of this building. I turned around to see these people, and they looked like homeless people. Their clothes were worn, torn, had holes in them, chasing after me, and they seen that that I was up high, and it'd be a difficult situation to come after me. They started arguing amongst each other, and then all of a sudden, one of the persons broke from the group and started running the way I came, and they started chasing after the other person. So I didn't want to wait around and find out what was going down. So I jumped down and then started going down the way I was going down before. And they always told me when you're lost to try and walk into a straight line. Eventually you'll run into something. So I started walking and looking around, and I came across this store, but it was a tent, and there was armed guards there, and they were kind of guarding the store. And so I walked into the store, and the shelves were pretty much bare. There wasn't a lot of supplies and stuff. There was very few things. All eyes are upon me. I'm being watched. I know I was, so I wanted to make sure I was going to be a customer. So I grabbed a Reese's peanut butter cup. It was a single one, the one that they kind of hand out on candy and stuff. And so I went up to the counter to pay for it. It was $5.10. And so I reached in my pocket, and sure enough, I had a $5 bill and a $1 bill. And so I put it on the counter, and the guy took the money. I can't make change, so I'm going to give you the dollar back. So he gives me the dollar back, and I put it in my pocket. Man, that is one expensive candy bar. I thought for sure it'd be like 50 cents. He made the comment. He says, "We won't give the tax money to the government." And so I said, "Why is that?" And angrily, the guy said, "Well, there is no government." And so people start looking at me. Their attention was on me. He says, "Where have you been living under? A rock?" I said, "No, sir. I got a little confused. Sorry to bother you." And then with that, I grabbed my candy bar and walked out because I didn't want to stay there. I didn't want any unnecessary attention brought to myself. And so as I was walking out, I seen a group of people standing around a pit, and there were two dogs fighting in a pit, and then they were attacking each other. And then I noticed one guy jumped down into the pit. He let the dogs tear him apart. I was beside myself. I was like, wow. And then this guy came up, and he said there's 3 reasons why that guy did that. Out of despair, desperate, or he wanted his suffering to end. I looked at the guy and I says, "Isn't that the same thing?" He says, "You'll figure it out." Over the PA system, which I was shocked that they had electricity, they said that they just got done killing somebody and they're going to be serving him for dinner tonight, so everybody will have meat. And nobody seemed to be shocked by this. I was shocked on hearing this statement over the PA, and I thought to myself, I better leave. So I started leaving the town, and I started walking through this town, and I walked through this field, and I noticed that this man was sitting upon this hill. And so I walked towards this man to see what he's looking at. And so as I started walking up the hill, I seen down in a little valley that there was a city. It had lights, had electricity, it was all lit up. It was a really nice city. And then I started looking towards the city, and the guy stood up and said, "You don't want to go there." So I looked at him and I said, "Why not?" And it seems like they have water, electricity, seem like they have supplies. He says, "Look at the hopelessness on their faces." And so I looked in the window. As far off I could see the people in the window looking out, and sure enough, they seemed to be hopeless. And I looked around, and there was no fences, there was no barbed wire, there was no guards. They were just concrete barricades like you see on the highway to separate the cars from the other side of the traffic. And he said, "Those are citizens." I said, "Citizens? What do you mean by that?" He says, "It's like a membership." He says, "They don't have any supplies either. They have very little of anything." And they were led to believe that they would have supplies, but they really don't. They were lied to. Nobody can grow anything or produce anything in there. And so I said, "Well, I wonder how they're able to eat." And he said, "Yeah, that is the question, isn't it?" I said, "Why don't they just leave? There's no real fences or nothing." And he says, "It doesn't matter. Once you're there, you're a member." I looked at the city, I seen the hopelessness, I put everything together, and so I decided to go around the city. And I started going in a direction that I could go around the city. The city was quite large, so I actually had to go off into the left side of the city. I seen this town. It's a small town. I seen this intersection, so I started walking towards the intersection, and it looked like a small town. And there was a main street. There were stores and buildings on each side of the intersection, kind of like a small town USA. And there were shell casings everywhere. There were dead bodies everywhere. There were Jeeps pulled over. I seen this gun mounted on a truck and on row bars and everything. And I'm thinking, what was going on? You know, what happened? Was there a war? And so I started getting a little nervous. And then all of a sudden, I seen a bunch of people with machetes running towards me. And I took a step back, and I was just about to run. And this guy, dressed up in a military uniform, looked like a general. He had, out of the corner of my eye, I seen he had some kind of medals on his chest and everything. And the next thing I know, I heard this loud rifle go off like a shotgun. One of the guys grabbed his stomach and then collapsed. And then they stopped and they turned around and ran in the same direction. They retreated. And I said, "What is going on here?" And the guy turned to me, and I wasn't able to look at his face. I was only able to look down towards his feet. And he said, "It's an ethnic cleansing." "You mean like the Muslims against the Christians in Iran and Iraq?" He said, "Exactly." I said, "Man, I know I was walking forever, but I didn't know I walked right into Iran and Iraq." He said, "No, you are in the United States." I said, "How is this possible? Why didn't the government prevent this? Why isn't there police? Why isn't there, something stopping this?" And he said the government couldn't stop it. I said, "Was the government overrun?" He said, "No, it's just that they could not, because they passed laws in favor of the Muslims and passed laws against the Christians. So there was nothing they could do to prevent it." I looked around. I couldn't understand what I was seeing. I didn't get the whole grasp of this. My mind was racing about all the things I seen. I seen the situation, and the man stood there in the military uniform, and then all of a sudden I realized it was Jesus. He says, "I gave them what they wanted, not what they needed." He says, "I pulled my spirit from the earth. Just as they pulled me from the school systems, they pulled me from the government, and they pulled me from the people. So I pulled myself from the earth. I let this happen." They welcomed the Muslims in their country with open arms. And all of a sudden I had this revelation of the four horsemen. And I understood. It was like I had this super profound understanding of what he was trying to say. I looked around. I seen the dry riverbeds. It seemed like everything was dry and abandoned cars, the bodies everywhere. And next thing I know, Jesus handed me this rifle. The guy, he was still in a military uniform, and he handed me this rifle. I have never seen a rifle. I love guns, not to the point where I have a bunch. I don't. I just have just a hunting rifle. But I've seen a lot of war movies. I've seen a lot of action movies and stuff. And this gun that he handed to me, I've never seen. It was futuristic. It had a clear plastic magazine, and the bullets were smaller than a .50 caliber, but yet larger than .308. These shells were huge. You can clearly see them through the plastic in the magazine. It was clear. It almost looked like an AR-15, but it was a little bit bigger and just a little bit heavier.
Thank you for watching. Join me next time on JC Media.